But taqwa is like a well-trained horse, reins held firm, carrying its rider safely home.
Picture an epidemic. One person flees to the hills, the other builds immunity and runs toward the sick to help them.
But naming these ideas only gets you so far. Everyone talks about piety. The real work is understanding what Ali actually meant.
A question worth losing sleep over. Picture two men. One flees to a mountain cave, terrified that the city will corrupt him. The other walks straight into the noise and temptation of everyday life, and comes out untouched, even strengthened. Which one is truly pious? Most people would guess the hermit. Imam Ali, in the collected sermons and letters known as Nahjul-Balagha, argues the opposite, and in doing so, overturns a definition of piety that has shaped religious thought for centuries. A book built for moral reflection. Nahjul-Balagha gathers 241 sermons attributed to Ali, and while not every one is technically a sermon in form, roughly a third of them function as moral counsel, some brief, some sprawling. A handful stand out for their scope. One opens with a call to draw on divine wisdom. Another, al-Balagha, runs longer than any other sermon in the collection, and a third earned the nickname the Sermon of the Pious for how thoroughly it catalogs the virtues of a God-conscious life. The letters tell a similar story. Of the roughly 79 included, about a quarter carry substantial ethical instruction. The most famous is Ali's letter to his son Hassan, tender, direct, and second in length only to his instructions to his governor Malik al-Ashta. Another, addressed to his provincial governor Ibn Hunayf, is equally well known. What taqwa really means. Start with taqwa, arguably the single most emphasized idea in the entire book. Few religious texts return to one concept as insistently as Nahjul-Balagha returns to this one. The common assumption is that taqwa simply means restraint, that the more a person withdraws from the world, denies themselves, and avoids engagement with life, the more pious they become. Under this view, piety is essentially subtraction, retreat from society, and you protect your soul from contamination. There's a kernel of truth buried in this. Discipline, knowing what to accept and what to refuse, is genuinely necessary for a well-ordered life. Even the foundational declaration of faith, there is no God but God, works through both negation and affirmation simultaneously. You cannot arrive at devotion to God without first rejecting every false claimant to that devotion. Rejection and acceptance are two halves of the same act. But here's the catch. Healthy rejection always has a direction. It moves towards something. Renunciation without a goal, abstinence for its own sake, is empty. And more importantly, Ali doesn't actually define taqwa as abstinence at all, even the reasoned kind. He defines it as something else entirely, a trained inner capacity built through repeated practice that makes moral steadiness possible. Self-denial isn't the substance of taqwa. It's a byproduct, something that shows up before and after the real transformation, not the transformation itself. The rider and the wild horse. This distinction matters enormously in practice. Someone who lacks the inner faculty of taqwa has only one strategy left for avoiding sin. Stay away from anything that might tempt them. Since temptation exists everywhere in society, this forces them into isolation. Under this logic, the more reclusive someone becomes, the more holy they appear to onlookers. But someone who has actually cultivated taqwa doesn't need to run. They can move through the world, messy, tempting, unpredictable as it is, without being corroded by it. Ali offers a vivid way to picture the difference. Think of two people facing an epidemic. One flees to the hills and hides until the danger passes. The other gets inoculated, stays in the city, and, free of fear, runs toward the sick to help them. The second person hasn't avoided the epidemic. They've built immunity to it. A well-known poet once described the first kind of person, a sage found happy in a mountain cave, who, when asked to return to the city, explained that even elephants slip in the city's thick mud, meaning temptation is simply too dangerous to risk. Ali's vision of Taqwa rejects that logic entirely. He makes the point through another image, this time of horsemanship. An undisciplined soul is compared to an unbroken horse whose reins have slipped loose. It bolts wildly and drags its rider straight into ruin. Taqwa, by contrast, is like a well-trained horse. The reins stay firmly in the rider's hands, and the animal carries him safely home. A person governed by their appetites, lacking Taqwa, is a rider with no control, taken wherever their impulses drag them. A person who has developed Taqwa is a skilled horseman, steering a responsive mount exactly where he intends to go. Fear of God as a symptom, not the cause. Ali goes further still. Real Taqwa toward God is what produces restraint from wrongdoing and reverence for the divine. Sleepless nights and fasting days come as its natural fruit, not as the thing itself. In other words, Taqwa isn't the same as abstinence, and it isn't the same as fear. Both are downstream effects of a deeper spiritual capacity. He calls Taqwa a shield in this life and a road to salvation in the next, and elsewhere compares it to an impregnable fortress on high ground, one no enemy can breach. Across all of these images, the emphasis lands in the same place. Taqwa is fundamentally an inward transformation. Once it takes root, corruption starts to feel genuinely repellent, and virtue starts to feel like home. Not because a person is hiding from the world, but because something in them has changed.